time out and coming here. So what the format is, I'll go ahead and start, and then we'll just go through the members who are here. We'll throw it one to another, and then yes, Glenn, can you hear me? And then from there, I'll come back up and wrap up, and if we've got time, we might do a few questions at that point. So I think everyone understands pretty clearly that there is a crisis on the southern border. Some of our friends across the aisle are in disagreement with that. Secretary Mayorkas does not think that the border is open. He thinks that he has operational control. Although the the Secure Fence Act of 2006 clearly defines what operational control of a border is, and that means that no contraband or individual can come in the country illegally. And yet, under his watch, Secretary Mayorkas has allowed in approximately 5 million illegal aliens coming through, and that doesn't include gotaways. So I'm going to make a case briefly, as only I can. I shouldn't say that. I mean, when I say briefly, it'll probably be longer than briefly, but I'm going to go as quickly as I can and try to make some points when people say to me, why Secretary Mayorkas? And I will tell you why. First of all, when we look at intentionality, this is done intentionally. This is not negligence. It is not by accident. It is not incompetence. And how do we know that? Well, just like we would look at a culpable mental state, like intentionality or knowledge, we look at a totality of circumstances. So the first thing, let's look at policies. What were the policies that were in place before Secretary Mayorkas came? Build the fence, finish building the wall. He stopped that. Used the Remain in Mexico policy, the MPP program. They said no. In fact, they sued to get out of that program. Title 42. We were in the middle of an epidemic. They stopped that or slowed it down. They didn't ever stop it. They slowed it down significantly. But now they're stopping in 2 months' time. They prohibited ICE from removing people who had already been here in this country, millions of people, who had due process and had removal orders. He ordered them to stop removing those individuals. And we had the lowest number of deportations in 2021, well below even President Obama's levels of 59,000. And he re-implemented a catch and release program, typified above by the abuse of the parole statutes. Parole is meant to be a case-by-case basis, limited use for being in the country. He himself admits that in testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee. And yet he is granted mass parole status. Last year, over 300,000. He's got a new program designed just for 4 nations, Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, that'll bring in up to 360,000 people for parole in those 2 programs alone. He has allowed the non-detained docket to grow to approximately 5 million people. It's just under 5 million people right now. He created new categories for ICE priorities. That's just in the policy segment. Now, I'm going to let other people talk, and I will then, when I come back up, I'll finish off why this is obviously intentional. I'll talk about his statements that he's made. I'll talk about the numbers and how those relate to this, and I'll talk about the ongoing programs that he's putting in place to facilitate illegal immigration. That's why I say Secretary Mayorkas must be impeached. The founders said that you have impeachment for high crimes and misdemeanors. That's constitutional. And they defined high crimes. They didn't say you had to be convicted of a felony. What they said is you have a public official who has violated public trust. And there's nobody who typifies that more, in my opinion, than Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. I'm going to throw it to my friend, who's also, we're co-sponsoring each other's impeachment resolutions. And that would be the Honorable Pat Fallon from Texas. Pat, you're up. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. You know, many of you may know, as the Congressman just mentioned, that I also introduced articles of impeachment on Alejandro Mayorkas. So let me be clear. Everyone is on the same team, and I hope, quite frankly, that there are more articles that are filed, because there has been a gross dereliction of duty. We're all here to achieve the same goal. We want to remove Alejandro Mayorkas from office because he's not serving the American people. He's serving a lot of the interests that are enemies of the American people. The Mexican drug cartels come to mind. But time and again, we've heard that the border is secure when we know that the truth isn't anything close to that. The situation has gone from a crisis to a catastrophe, and now it's nearing a collapse. We had never had a month ever in our history. Just as Andy said, as the Homeland Security Director, or the Homeland Security Secretary, he is supposed to maintain operational control of the southern border. He is violating a 2006 Congressional law that says that you have to maintain operational control. You do not have operational control when we had never had a month in our history of over 200,000 illegal border crossings. It had never happened before. The last 10 months in a row have been over 200,000. In fact, April was our worst month, April of 2022, with 234,000 illegal border crossings. 1,258% worse than the last April President Trump had been in office. Then the very next month, it was 241,000. That was 930% worse than the last May that President Trump had been in office, to give you context. And then in December, 251,000. Now that's the worst month ever. 160 countries have had citizens cross our border illegally. This is a global problem. Over 100 folks that have been on the terrorist watch list have been apprehended at our southern border as well. The drug cartels are making wild profits, $25 billion by many estimates, but then they make an additional $13 billion from human smuggling. So they've almost increased their revenue by 50%. 5 million people have crossed the border illegally under Joe Biden's watch. That is not operational control under anyone's definition. He has perjured himself in front of Congress, and he has misled the American people by saying that Border Patrol agents on horseback whipped Haitian migrants when he knew it wasn't true. Emails have shown that. And he still undermined his own Border Patrol agents and lied to the American people. He needs to be removed from office so that people today know, and people that come tomorrow, history will know that he will be the second cabinet member impeached. And I want to thank everybody behind me. Thank you for coming, and thank you, Randy, for your articles. You're very courageous. The next speaker is going to be our great friend from Colorado, Lauren Boebert.
Thanks, Pat. Thank you. Thank you all so much for being here today, and I want to say thank you to the chairman of the Border Security Caucus for putting this together, and Pat Fallon also. It's great to have people who are aggressive about holding people accountable, because there's been no accountability for the past 2 years. I am happy to serve on the Oversight and Accountability Committee now, and we're finally having hearings to get to the bottom of government waste, fraud, dereliction of duty. We'll be having hearings on the border next week, and I'm looking forward to providing answers and truth to the American people who have been gaslit and lied to about what's going on, when they have Secretary Mayorkas coming to Congress and lying, saying that the southern border is secure. I've been down there 3 times. The southern border is not secure. Not when we have 4.5 million illegals apprehended at our southern border. Not when we have, in November, 700,000 known gotaways at our southern border. There is an invasion taking place on our southern border, and we're seeing historic highs in nearly every tragic category associated with illegal immigration. Dead bodies are being found nearly every day. 750 dead bodies were found in 2022 alone. This is a humanitarian crisis. Fentanyl flowing through our southern border is seeing record highs. It's devastating our communities. In 2021, 11,201 pounds of fentanyl, which is enough to kill every American nearly 7 times over, was seized by Customs and Border Patrol agents. Now that's just what was seized. How much was not seized? How much came into our country? we're seeing that this is the #1 cause of death for Americans ages 18 to 45. We know that 300 people will die today of fentanyl poisoning. Criminals on the terrorist watch list being caught entering our country is way, way up. 6 were caught under President Trump. 6 apprehended. 6 criminals on the known terrorist watch list. Well, 98 have been caught in Biden's first 2 years. How many got away? How many were not stopped at the southern border? And the reason for these increases isn't because our laws have changed. It's because Secretary Mayorkas has put in place policies that have handcuffed our brave Border Patrol agents of doing their job. I've spoke to them. I've looked them in the eye. I've asked them, what can I do to help you? After all, we're from the federal government and we're here to help. They let us know that they don't need more resources. They don't need more equipment. They don't need more personnel because that's just another processing agent. They need the policies and the ability to enforce our nation's laws so they can go home and feel justified about the work that they have done that day rather than being defeated and demoralized and prevented from doing the job that they swore to do. Congress has passed numerous laws that, if applied, would deliver a secure border. Secretary Mayorkas is blatantly ignoring and not enforcing these laws for political reasons. His actions have increased the suicide rates of our Customs and Border Patrol agents. He's in charge of them and he's letting them down. His actions have endangered the American people and has left Congress no recourse but to impeach Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Thank you again for being here. Thank you again to the chairman. And I now yield to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Brian Babin.
Thank you, Lauren. And I also want to thank Pat Fallon and my fellow co-chair of our Border Security Caucus, Andy Biggs. Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming. We're here today because Alejandro Mayorkas, Secretary of Homeland Security, has repeatedly violated the oath that he swore, his constitutional duty, and must be held accountable. Over the last year, he has been warned repeatedly to reverse course, and his refusal to do so will no longer be tolerated by the House of Representatives now that we are in the majority. He has perjured himself, lying multiple times under oath, and he continues to do everything in his power to exacerbate this deadly border crisis, as you've heard some of the numbers thrown out today of dead people, dead migrants, dead Americans. Partisanship, I want you to know, partisanship plays no role in today's actions. This is all about negligence and upholding the law. That's what it is. Mayorkas has shown a totally willful disregard for his court orders that he has been receiving from our federal courts. He has dismissed laws requiring the construction of physical barriers along the southern border. He has refused to detain inadmissible illegal aliens, even though he's mandated to do so by law. And in spite of his claim, folks, he has failed to maintain operational control over our southern border. But it's not just that. Think about the hundreds of families who today will be told that their loved one overdosed and died because of fentanyl poisoning that was smuggled through and across our southern border. Think about the hundreds of migrants being assaulted, raped, and killed on their journey to and across the border today, as we speak. I've seen the cartels rape trees. I've seen them decorated with the undergarments of young victims, and I can tell you it is nauseating to behold. Think about how those 50 migrants felt in my state, in that big truck. 50 migrants. How did they feel as they suffocated in the back of a tractor trailer in the sweltering San Antonio heat? Think about the mourning of loved ones of the 20-year-old young lady, an autistic lady from Maryland, our neighboring state here, who was raped and murdered, strangled by an MS-13 gang member that this administration had released into the country just months before. And I would remind you that this murderer was a UAC, an unaccompanied child, but an unaccompanied child who was an MS-13 member and who was very capable of carrying out a heinous atrocity like that. The consequences of Mayorkas' actions are lengthy, they're serious, and they're tragic. And folks, he must answer for them all, and he must be impeached. And with that, I would like to introduce my friend from Virginia, Representative Bob Good.
I want to thank Congressman Andy Biggs and Congressman Pat Fallon for initiating both these articles of impeachment, for which I'm proud to be a co-sponsor. There's only one person more deserving of impeachment than Secretary Mayorkas, and of course that would be Secretary Biden, for whom Secretary Mayorkas is carrying out his wishes in terms of the border invasion. I've been to the border 5 times. I recognize Virginia is not geographically located at the border, but we have MS-13 gang members. We have illegal aliens all over our district because of this border invasion perpetrated by Secretary Mayorkas. Now, I've been to the border 5 times. I've been there 5 times, 3 times in Arizona, 2 times in Texas, and I've never seen a Democrat there. I've only seen Republicans, and when you talk to the border agents, they tell you Democrats never come to the border. It's no wonder that Secretary Mayorkas refused initially to allow his border agents to testify to our oversight committee. The people's representatives, the members of Congress charged with the responsibility of holding the executive branch accountable, and Secretary Mayorkas said, no, I'm not going to let my agents testify because I don't want the American people to know what is happening at their southern border. It was only under threat of subpoena that he has finally complied and agreed to allow these border agents to testify. As others have said, 5 million illegals facilitated, helped, purposefully brought across the border by the policies of this administration executed by Secretary Mayorkas. Now think about those 5 million. They get free social services. They get free travel. They get $500 a night in a hotel at taxpayer expense. I had a businessman in my district tell me the federal government has offered him $3,800 a month per illegal to put them up in his facility that he owns. He owns a facility that is a camp-like facility, and he's been offered $3,800 a month from the federal government to house each illegal alien that's in our country. They get free health care, free education, overtaxing our schools and our social services. 5 million. And when you ask Democrats how many are enough, we asked Mayorkas how much is enough when he came up here before us, and they greet us with stone silence. They will not answer that question. But that's the 5 million they have helped. Then there's the 1 million criminal gotaways. The ones who don't want the hotel stay, that don't want the free travel, that don't want the social services, that don't want the free education. They don't want that. Why would they not want that? 1 million. Why not? Let's presume for a moment that 90% of those are wonderful people. And there's only 100,000 out of 1 million that are here with nefarious intent. Would anyone like to take that bet? You think 90% of the criminal gotaways are here for productive purposes to help make us better as a country? Maybe it's only 1% that are here for nefarious purposes. That's 10,000. How many did it take to perpetrate 9/11? And I submit to you, until we successfully close this border, and whether that takes impeaching Mayorkas for what he has done and what he intends to do that we cannot allow to go on for another 2 years, these criminal illegals who are here, the gotaways, will not exercise what they intend to do to our country until we seal that border and we stop letting their accomplices in. It is for that and many other reasons that we must impeach this secretary, we must impeach Mayorkas, and follow Article 4, Section 4, our responsibility to protect our states from invasion. And now I turn it over to the Congresswoman from Georgia, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank Mr. Biggs from Arizona for introducing these articles of impeachment. And I'd also like to thank Mr. Fallon from Texas for introducing articles of impeachment. Impeachment is very serious, and it's a tool that we have to hold office holders accountable for high crimes and misdemeanors. And as Mr. Biggs laid out, Secretary Mayorkas has lost the trust and confidence of the people of the United States of America. Our border is overrun. We are invaded every single day. But let's talk about fentanyl for a minute. Fentanyl is a dangerous poison that is coming from China into Mexico, and the Mexican cartels are smuggling it and selling it across our border. And just as one of my colleagues pointed out a few minutes ago, they are making billions by doing this, and it is such a shame. We have to impeach Secretary Mayorkas for his failure to the American people, not only by not stopping and securing our border, stopping over 5 million people from coming in, but this dangerous poison that's killing over 300 Americans every single day. Just this week, there were 3 people that overdosed and were poisoned by fentanyl in a county, Walker County in my district. And then the night before, there were 3 others that were poisoned in a neighboring county. Luckily, they survived because of Narcan and because police and fire could get there quickly and save their lives. Fentanyl kills anyone it touches. It is so dangerous. It doesn't care about Republican or Democrat. It doesn't care what color your skin is. It doesn't care about your identity one single bit, but it will kill you. And because of this failure and this dangerous, it's an epidemic in our country, fentanyl is, and we have to do something about it. And it's Secretary Mayorkas' responsibility to stop it from coming in our country. But I'll go a step further. It's also President Biden's responsibility. I've called for his impeachment because of his failure to protect our country as well, and I'll continue to call to impeach President Biden for that reason as well. But I'm honored to stand here with my colleagues today, calling out Secretary Mayorkas and letting him know we are going to impeach you, so you should resign now. Thank you very much. And with that, I turn it over to my colleague. Let's see, where are we at? Congressman Troy Nels.
I have no prepared remarks. I just left a judiciary hearing with some of my colleagues, and we listened to a sheriff out of Arizona that was describing to the entire committee, the full committee, just about how difficult of a job he does each and every day, the thousands of miles of county that he has to protect because the people in his great county gave him the vote of confidence to be the sheriff. I looked at him in the eyeballs. I said, Sheriff, I understand your pain. I feel your pain. He shared a story of a young lady, 65 years old, heading to her birthday party in a car. Some knucklehead runs a red light, a high rate of speed. It kills her. 3 illegals inside the vehicle. I shared with him my story about a knucklehead that killed a woman in my county as well. These are not isolated incidents anymore, folks. These take place way too often in our country. And it just seems, in my humble opinion, when you look at Mayorkas, you look at Joe Biden, you look at Kamala Harris, they don't place the American people first. I am an America First patriot, and we have to secure our southern border. I guess maybe 100,000 lives, deaths each and every year isn't enough. What will it take to get the attention of this administration and do something about the amount of drugs that are coming into this country? And if anybody cares, any of you care about human trafficking, sex trafficking, it's coming. It's coming. It's here. They're going to be coming up into the city of Houston, one of the sex capitals, the human trafficking capitals in the country. And they're going to be in our barrios. They're going to be off of 59 in Bel Air at noon for some sicko to come up and try to get them in their car. That's what happens in the city of Houston. And what do you got there? You got a silly, crazy mayor over there in the city of Houston. He doesn't seem to care either. He doesn't care. So my position and my plea to this administration, listen to the Border Patrol agents, listen to your law enforcement officers, listen to the numerous mayors and everybody else down at those southern border, and secure the southern border. And for the first time, Joe Biden, put the American people first.
Claudia Tinney, New York.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Troy. Congressman Nels, Andy Biggs, appreciate it. Congressman Fallon, all my colleagues for being here and highlighting this important issue. And I have to say, I have to echo the sentiments that it isn't just Secretary Mayorkas, it is also Joe Biden who ultimately bears the responsibility. They've had over 2 years to secure our border, and we're seeing this flow of illegal immigrants. 4.5 million, only 72,000 have been deported. That's less than 2% of people claiming to be coming across this border. They've actually made it worse. And I'm from New York State, which is a border state. Upstate New York is also bordering with Canada, and that's a whole issue we're going to talk about on another day. But I support this resolution in demanding the resignation and now the impeachment of Secretary Mayorkas. If he won't leave, we're going to have to impeach him, and a clear dereliction of duty. I also support the impeachment of Joe Biden. His policies, all their policies, have created this humanitarian and national security disaster, as you've heard detailed by my colleagues. But let me tell you a little bit about the small rural counties in upstate New York. We're the ones that had those night flights into Westchester County a couple of years ago that were highlighted by some officials that were secret. I led a letter with my colleague Elise Stefanik and our leadership team and other members of the New York delegation. I'm getting full transparency from President Biden and Secretary Mayorkas on who are these people that are illegal immigrants that are coming to the state of New York. Just recently, we had a discovery that there were 35 Colombian illegal immigrants in the small hamlet of Jamestown, a population of 28,000 people. We don't know where they came from. We don't know anything about them. We don't know who's paying for it. But guess who is paying for it in the end, because the Biden administration is not being transparent about it? Our local taxpayers. And in New York, we face the highest tax burden of any state in the nation. Our local taxpayers still pay 1/2 of the Medicaid share that no other state imposes on their local communities as New York State does. So that translates into some of the highest property taxes in the state of New York. And a lot of you think, hey, Westchester, Long Island. Guess what? Upstate New York pays the highest per thousand rates on property taxes because of our low property values and our very high taxes. And that's because these burdens have been imposed on our taxpayers who have the least ability to pay. Last year, it's worthy of note, a Yemeni terrorist was apprehended at the southern border wearing a jacket representing an upstate New York ambulance service, something we think he must have gotten online. An Iranian citizen was detained yesterday who is on the terror watch list. Thankfully, there's one that they were able to get. I mean, this is happening every single day. And as I discussed these migrants in Western New York in Jamestown, I heard from the county executive this morning about who these people are, and he didn't even know, wasn't informed. Why isn't the Biden administration letting our local governments know who's there and why they're there? Every state in this country has become a border state, as we know. We're hearing about these flights everywhere. I visited the border as well, and when I went to the airport in El Paso, it was filled with people who were dressed in the clothes of illegal immigrants are issued at the border. I feel terrible as a mother of a son and a mom thinking about the human trafficking and the dangers to our children that have been described, not to mention the fentanyl overdoses that are overwhelming our communities. And it's the principal duty of our federal government to provide our national security. The reason New York didn't sign on to the Constitution until the very last hour in the 1700s was because of our desire to have sovereignty and to make sure that our federal government protected our national security and our national defense. That is not happening under President Biden or under this secretary, which is why I join with my colleagues in calling for the impeachment of Secretary Mayorkas. Let's hope he resigns today as a result of this press conference. If not, let's go forward with impeachment proceedings to make sure that we do something to protect our southern border, which is causing us great harm, not just to the security of our nation, but also to our taxpayers, and particularly those in upstate New York. It's a privilege to join with my colleagues, strong, courageous leaders who stand up for our country. And I think next, I believe, is Nancy Mace, or Eli. Now, Eli Crane. Happy to introduce you. Thank you.
It's great to be here with my colleagues. I stand in support of this resolution to impeach Secretary Mayorkas because the American people deserve better. That is why I was sent here. I never wanted to be a politician, never wanted to come live in this town, but I got tired of watching it. I can't believe that Secretary Mayorkas and others in this administration would talk about operational control. What a joke. If you've been watching the television, if you've seen the hundreds of illegals streaming in through that southern border each and every day, if you talk to constituents and American citizens who have had their loved ones killed by fentanyl or abused or violated by some of the MS-13 gang members that come across through that southern border, did you guys know that last year alone we had close to 100 members on the terrorist watch list come through that southern border? Is that okay with you guys? It's not okay with me. It's not okay with my voters. Some of you guys are old enough to remember 9/11 and what happened. You know, we had a saying in the military, it was play stupid games, win stupid prizes. And unfortunately, that's what this administration is doing. That is what Secretary Mayorkas is doing. Talk is cheap in this town, and I pray that we get the opportunity to impeach Secretary Mayorkas. Whether we impeach him or he resigns, I really don't care. But the American people deserve better. And I hope it sends a message to the next individual that steps up to do that job, because we do have people here now that will do whatever it takes to hold these folks accountable, because I'll say it again, the American people deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you. From South Carolina, the gentleman, Ralph Norman.
Thank you, Andy. I'm proud to join my colleagues up here. Andy, Pat, thanks for bringing this. You know, I had a prepared speech, has already been said. Let me tell you, what this man has done is lied repeatedly. He was at the oversight meeting. I said, Secretary Mayorkas, is the border secure? He said, yes. I said, will you define unsecure? And he just sat there with a blank stare. What he's doing is intentional. It's killing our children at 100,000 a year now. It's killing our law enforcement. And it is unfair for the American people to have to pay for this. It was amazing. The mayor of New York, he's crying now because of the $1 billion over budget they are because of the illegals. Where was your voice when you should have been protesting what this administration is doing? Folks, it's incomprehensible to not to even go down to the border and Kamala Harris to laugh about it. Folks, it's time for a change. Here's a preview of coming attractions. Whoever Biden puts up, if he's another imbecile like this guy, then we're going to have another conference like this and impeach him. It's time for a change. It's time for, and thank God the Republicans are doing something about it. The Democrats have done nothing. The deaths are okay with them. And now it's time for a stop, and it couldn't come quick enough. You've got true patriots here, and I just want to thank each and every one of you. We're going to continue to speak up daily. God bless America. God bless each of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Eric Burleson from Missouri.
When I was knocking doors in 2008 for State House, the number one topic on everyone's mind was the illegal immigration issue in 2008. And I was surprised when I was knocking doors just this last year across the district, and the number one issue, again, was illegal immigration, yes, even in Southwest Missouri, because it impacts directly the lives of the citizens, even in the state of Missouri. This, what's been said already, I don't want to repeat, but I will say, in 2006, when Congress ordered the Secretary of Homeland Security to, quote, achieve and maintain operational control over the entire international land and maritime borders of the United States, it said operational control is defined as the prevention of all unlawful entries into the United States, including entries by terrorists and other unlawful aliens, instruments of terrorism, narcotics, and other contraband. He is absolutely guilty of failing to perform operational control, if not reverse all of the policies that were put in place by the Trump administration that did provide more control at our southern border. Because of his actions, he has encouraged record numbers of illegal aliens and drugs to enter this country. Instead of taking real steps to secure the border, Secretary Mayorkas is abusing his authority. There was once a time when people who didn't put on a badge of an R or D, who work in this city, at least had the pride to say that they worked for the nation and the interests of the people. Sadly, this is not the case with Mr. Mayorkas. And for that reason, I'm proud to join Congressman Biggs and the others in this effort to impeach this person. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Weber from Texas, followed by Mr. Clyde. George.
Thank you, Andy. I appreciate it. Folks, for the last 2 years, Secretary Mayorkas has rolled out the red carpet for illegals to enter our country, endangering every single American. We're going to coin a new phrase. Mayorkas' actions have been borderline treacherous, if you can pardon the pun, borderline traitorous, if we can coin that phrase. He's hurting every single American. Our nation is facing the world's worst border crisis we have ever seen as a direct result of his ignoring his constitutional duties. These include increases in criminal gang activity. You've heard about them today. I was the vice chairman of the border committee in the Texas legislature. I know the border well. These include human trafficking and drug smuggling happening every single day at the southern border. You've heard my colleagues say, now every border is a border state, because all of those drugs are working their way into the entire United States of America. House Republicans have not turned a blind eye to what is happening at our southern border. We have been yelling from the rooftops that communities around my great home, state of Texas, are falling victim to the crisis happening at our southern border, that tons, literally tons of fentanyl have poured across the border, killing our children. Folks, enough is enough. Under oath, you heard it said earlier, under oath, Secretary Mayorkas has insisted that there's no such crisis and our border is secure. What the heck? Clearly these are lies. And lies before Congress, I might add. Under oath, before Congress. Clearly these are grounds for impeachment. No question about it. Let's get something straight. No one is buying, quote, the border is secure line, Mr. Mayorkas, just because it's not secure. Our border is not secure. Nothing screams secure like 4.5 million illegal immigrants crossing the southern border. Really? Did I mention that it was illegally? Does he really call that secure? Secretary Mayorkas' willful disregard for the laws of the United States by releasing inadmissible aliens into the interior of the country and failing to secure and maintain operational control of our southern border has led us here today to call for his very impeachment. We're done. We're done sitting back and watching the Biden administration's failures, including those of securing our own border, of Homeland Security on behalf of the American citizens. The times and the crimes demand Secretary Mayorkas' impeachment. If he's borderline treacherous, if he's borderline traitorous, and he is, he's not just borderline impeachable, he's definitely impeachable. And with that, I yield to my good friend Andrew Clyde.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank my friend and colleague from Arizona, Mr. Biggs, for leading this fight on behalf of the American people. Because Americans have suffered long enough under Secretary Mayorkas' failed leadership and dangerous policies that are the cause of our border crisis. But what is most dangerous about this crisis is it's deliberate. It's absolutely deliberate. Secretary Mayorkas should be ashamed. If he had 1 ounce of dignity, he would admit his failure to secure our border, because the border is not secure, as you've heard member after member say that, because everyone knows it is nowhere near secure. And if he had a shred of respect for the sovereignty of our great nation and the safety of the American people, he would resign immediately, and not simply double down on his intentional support and facilitation, that's right, facilitation of the Biden administration's incentivized foreign invasion at our southern border. But since we expect the Secretary to ignore this demand to resign, it's up to Congress to fire him through impeachment. In fact, I believe Secretary Mayorkas' impeachment is long overdue. Last month, the new record was set for illegal border crossings. Over 250,000, 251,000 plus, and the Secretary continues to lie under oath to Congress and the American people, claiming the border is secure. How many more illegal aliens must evade CBP agents? How many more suspected terrorists must cross our southern border? And we just recently apprehended an Iranian on the terror watch list at the border. Thank you, Texas law enforcement. How many more Americans must overdose from the deadly fentanyl pouring across the open border and into our communities? How much more before enough is enough?
Secretary Mayorkas must go. And I'm proud to support Congressman Biggs' articles of impeachment, and I look forward to the day when I can vote to fire Secretary Mayorkas from his post once and for all. Thank you, and I yield to the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Grothman.
Thank you much. Obviously, a lot has already been said today. It's a drastic step to have to impeach Secretary Mayorkas, but he deserves it very much. I want you guys, and I kind of think sometimes the press has to do a better job here, of reporting to the American public the numbers of people coming here illegally since he took office. Because sometimes you hear President Biden talk, he kind of implies like, we don't have a crisis or, what happened here. In the most recent December available, 238,000 people crossed the border. 2 Decembers ago, that was 21,000. So when you go from 21,000 to 238,000 in 2 years, that's pretty impressive, isn't it? Every American ought to know it. I sometimes think because some people are coming across the border every month, eventually your eyes glaze over. It has gotten so much worse on this guy's watch. Another example, President Trump, the prior administration, frequently had the number of unaccompanied minors coming here every month under 1,000, and 2 years ago it was about 2,200. Now that's over 8,000, a fourfold increase on unaccompanied minors. Where was the press? Where is the press when they worry about families being broken up, when you have over 8,000 kids come across unaccompanied every month? Finally, in addition to all the people storming in here, you have the huge increase in drug deaths. Okay, 9 years ago, that was about 47,000 a year. Now our illegal drug deaths are 108,000 a year. Over double. And look out here, not everybody, looks like not many of the press covering here today remember Vietnam. I remember Vietnam. Big deal. Protesters, all the young Americans dying. We lose twice as many people every year to illegal drug overdoses in this country as they lost in 12 years in Vietnam. In Vietnam was about 57,000 in 12 years. We're now at about 108,000 every year. Isn't that a crisis? That should be a banner headline in the newspaper every day. And every month that the new numbers come out, and that December record, that was the all-time record number of people coming here every month. Every month that those new numbers come out, and they'll come out again in about 3 weeks, they'll come out with new numbers for January. That ought to be the banner headline in every newspaper in the country. Because I'll bet you dollars to donuts, it's going to be another all-time record. So I'm glad that my buddy Andy Biggs has introduced this resolution, and hopefully it goes somewhere, and hopefully the numbers are reported by the news media to alert the public as to what's going on. Thank you much, Andy.
Thank you, Glenn. I thank my friends who've been talking to you, but I thank you for being here and covering this. This is a critical issue. We don't willy-nilly take upon us the notion of impeaching a member of the Biden cabinet. I mean, that's not really what we would like to do. But I want to explain to you differently, because you've heard all kinds of the results of the policies of Secretary Mayorkas. But I want you to think about this for just a second. What you're seeing is the systematic destruction of the geographical integrity of the United States of America. We don't control our southern border. It is controlled by the criminal drug cartels of Mexico. That is critical to understand why we must undertake this most serious of actions. So when Alexander Hamilton wrote in the 65th Federalist, and when James Madison, when he was recording the minutes of the original Constitutional Convention, they talked about what constitutes high crimes and misdemeanors and why we do that. We do it for a couple things. A public official who has abused and violated the public trust and constitutes a danger that we can't wait till the next election to remove them. This particular secretary started immediately emasculating the very, very strong policies of the previous administration. So, for instance, I want to give you a reference point. In 2020, the Yuma sector, for the entire fiscal year, encountered 9,000, fewer than 9,000, about 8,800 illegal aliens crossing. In last fiscal year, under the policies of Alejandro Mayorkas, more than 350,000, in fact, more than 360,000 encounters in the Yuma sector alone. If we were to take Yuma as the microcosm, you would see a community where the lone hospital that they have is having to try to figure out how they eat more than $25 million in costs from illegal aliens who've come into their community hospital. Every day, 3 or 4 women come into the maternity ward. 10 or 12 people, somewhere in that neighborhood, every day go into their emergency room. These are not people that have surrendered to the CBP and then are being taken there for treatment. No, these are people who've walked across the border to receive care at the hospital in Yuma. Well, what does that do? That impedes everybody else in the community from getting their medical care taken care of. And it puts a strain on that hospital that is caused directly by Alejandro Mayorkas. So, I told you I would give you additional reasons to think about this. But the top line is, he's attacked the geographical integrity of the United States, and if you study history, you'll understand very clearly that when the dissolution of great nations begins to occur, one of the first things to go is your geographical integrity. Your boundaries, your borders are erased. And our borders have been erased by Secretary Mayorkas. And why do we know it's deliberate? I gave you the policies that he changed. We've talked about the numbers. I could give you various statements. Some of them have talked about these statements. The bottom line is this. Secretary Mayorkas, and I told this to him directly, if he disagrees with President Biden on these policies, then he either must invoke different policies or resign. But if these are his policies that he finds accord with, then he must be impeached because he is a public official who has lost public trust and is an immediate, imminent threat to the United States of America. In fact, he's beyond a threat. It's going to take a long, long time. If we stopped his policies today, it would take a long, long time to reverse the damage that he has done. And he's not stopping. He's invoking the new parole procedure. And he's giving people an app on their smartphone. If you've been down to the border, love you all to come with me to a border trip sometime. I know many of these people up here have been with me down to the border. And I can tell you this. Almost everybody coming across has a smartphone. And now he's got an app for them. Let's pre-register. Because you know where the money that's going? Because they're going to say, this administration is going to tell you, we're putting all kinds of money down there. You know what that money is being used for? To quickly and more efficiently release these people into the United States of America. Parole's meant to be used for individual case-by-case basis. But he's doing mass paroles. And you know what he's going to say to you? Because what's going to happen is now everybody's going to be going through the ports of entry and being given immediate parole. That's de facto amnesty. They're going to be able to work. They're going to be given legal status. And he's going to be telling you next month or the month after, he's going to say, hey, the encounters are down. You know why encounters will be down? Because people that typically come through between the ports of entry are now going to be going through the ports of entry because they know they're going to be given de facto amnesty by this administration. Ladies and gentlemen, that is one more reason why the Secretary has violated his oath of office. He's wreaking havoc on this country, and he must be impeached. With that, I thank my colleagues for joining me. Thank you for being here, and we will be proceeding with this impeachment swiftly as our chairman will let us hold these hearings. I'll take 2 questions. Yeah.
President Trump said, "I like acting," meaning he liked acting secretaries of Homeland Security, and he was able to push aggressive policy reforms because he had acting secretaries. Are you concerned that if this works, President Biden might do the same thing?
What I hope that this would do is that it would send a signal to not just to President Biden, but whoever comes in to fill this chair, that Congress cares and watches, the American people cares and watches, and you will be held accountable if you continue with this reckless, not just reckless, intentional attack on America's integrity of our geography, of our borders, and you have all that series of secondary and tertiary impacts that come from that kind of recklessness. And so that's what I would hope would happen. You got one more? Yeah.
Does Speaker McCarthy support this effort?
Speaker McCarthy, 2 months before the election, he said he didn't think anybody needed to be impeached from the Biden administration. He has since changed his mind, and I'm hoping that he'll be fully on board. And I'm confident when we present our case and we start this, hopefully in the Judiciary Committee, that he would be on board. I'm hopeful of that. With that, thank you, everybody. No timeline. We have to work through the committees. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so he can help me work the